Thanks for watching this short helpful video for SharePoint Oregon.gov sites. In this video, we'll discuss things to consider about building a list, how to build a list in SharePoint 2016, how to add columns to that list, and we'll talk about adding, editing, and deleting list items. Why is the list being built? Is it for a specific web part? And if so, what kinds of columns does the web part want? And what kinds of data is appropriate to the web part? Is it for populating a column in another list? Will any of the information in a list be seasonal or intermittently used? And what data will be used and for what purposes? A list might be used to hold top task links to be used in the task box web parts on an agency homepage. In this case, a few simple columns are all that are needed to give a title and a link to a site page. On the other hand, a list might be used to serve as a data store of information containing columns of data and links to documents or even other sites. There are many uses for lists, so have a goal in mind before you start to build. There are other videos in this series addressing lists for specific purposes and how web parts might work with them. My goal here is to create a list that will be a list of people, phone numbers, and email addresses to be used with the data tables web part. Some of those contacts will be seasonal employees, and I want to offer that information as well. To create the list, navigate to the Site Contents view of the site the list is to reside in. This view is where all the lists and libraries in the site or subsite are visible. Select Add an App. Select Custom List, and name the list, and in this case, Contacts, and then click Create. The new list will appear in the Site Contents view of the site. Click the name of the list to open it. Notice that the list is empty and appears to only have one column, Title. There are actually more, but we have to look deeper to see them. Select the List tab in the ribbon and choose List Settings. This is where the details of the list are found. Notice in the column section we can see 5 column names. Only one column appears in the default view of the list called All Items. We'll discuss views in the next video. So, congratulations, the list has been created. Adding columns. Now that a list exists, we need to add columns to the list. I'm building a contact list with seasonal contacts, so I have decided that the information I want to display is name, phone number, email address, and whether the employee is seasonal or full-time. I also want an indicator to tell whether a seasonal contact is presently active on staff. So there's one more piece of information that the list will need, even though this one will not be shown on the contacts page. Active, which is a yes or no choice. This active column will be used in the video on building views of a list. We'll use the title column for the contact's name, but I'd like to name it more appropriately, so first I'll click the name of the title column to enter the column settings. I'm changing the name of the column to Name. Other column settings, such as requiring that data be entered or ensuring that the column value is unique, can be set here if desired. I'll make an entry here required, but not require it to be unique. When the settings have been set, click OK, and you'll be returned to the List Settings page. Notice that the formerly named Title column is now called Name. Now we'll create a new column for the phone number. In the Columns section of the List Settings page, choose Create Column. Title the column Phone Number and select Single Line of Text. Other settings can be made, like being required or setting a different maximum number of characters. When finished, click OK. Again, you'll be delivered to the List Settings page, where you will now see a phone number column in the default view. Next, we'll build the email address column. Choose Create Column, name the column email address, and for this column, choose the hyperlink or picture column type, and notice that the settings for the column change. This is normal, and each column type has its own set of settings that apply to it. Set Required, and choose Hyperlink, and click OK. Now we see the email address column in the default view. Create the full-time or seasonal column. Choose Create Column, name it Employment Type. Choose the Choice column type. Again, notice that the settings change, and you're able to set the choices for the column. Replace the default values with full-time and seasonal. I'll choose the display type. Keep in mind that if multiple selections are allowed, then checkboxes must be used. Set the rest of the settings as desired and click OK when you're finished. And lastly, we'll create the active column. Choose Create Column. Name the new column Active, and choose the Yes/No checkbox column type, and click OK. Now we have all the columns we need to use this list for a contact page. To return to the default list view, click the breadcrumb for the list's name at the top of the page. The list is still empty, but now we see that all the columns are available. Each of these columns will act as an entry field for the list items. And so now it's time to populate the list. Click New Item, and you'll be presented with a form with entry fields corresponding to the columns included in the list. And fill in the fields. Notice that the hyperlink column will want to see a properly formed link, so using Mail To is required. When the fields are full, choose Save, and the item will be saved to the list. Add as many items as you like. SharePoint does not start to be affected by the load until a list reaches around 5,000 items. At over several hundred items, the browser may take a few seconds to build the list view page. Once a list is populated, an item in that list can be changed or edited by simply clicking on the list item's title. This will open the list item, and in the ribbon, click Edit to open the item for editing. Now changes can be made, and when changes are finished, click Save. The list item will now reflect the changes that were made. When it becomes necessary to remove or delete a list item, there are two ways to do this easily. The first is to simply use the ellipsis in the list items line and choose Delete Item. The second is to select the list item, clicking on the check mark next to its name, and in the Items tab of the ribbon, choose Delete Item. Either of these will be equally effective. Views are valuable for many reasons, not the least of which is to segment a large list into small sections of related or relatable items that can be consumed by web parts on a page. Be sure to watch the videos on building list views and web parts, where building the relationships between list views and web parts is described and demonstrated. Thanks for watching this video on building lists for SharePoint Oregon.gov websites.